All right, we are here in the studio. Cole Johnson here with Andrew Parks, talking some college basketball here for Beyond the Box Score and Crouch Chant Sports. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter at Crouch Chant Sport, and also our website. I will give you the link. You go to www.crouchchantsports.wordpress.com. You can catch all of our podcasts and radio shows on there, also with sports articles that we will write every now and then. So Parks is joining me again. Another nice night, Parks. How you doing?
Good. Yourself?
I'm doing good. I mean, we're talking basketball. It's always fun.
Of course.
I always bring Parks in here to talk with me here. Probably going to come in here almost every week, talk something different. Maybe college basketball, some NBA. I mean, college football we did last week, but that came to a close after the national championship, so we probably won't get back into that till next fall. But we're going to start off today talking about what just happened the other night. Tuesday night, number 1, number 2, and number 4 all got knocked off on the same day. And actually the last time that happened was in 1979.
Wow.
A long time ago.
Yeah, for sure.
And, I mean, we see upsets every year. Happens a couple times a year. I mean, the Marquette beating Villanova is definitely upset. Villanova had a 17-point lead in the second half. Blew it. Lost to an unranked Marquette. The other two games, Kansas lost to West Virginia, which is a good team. They're ranked number 12 in the country at the time. 18th. And Kentucky lost at Tennessee, who was also unranked.
Yeah, I think definitely the most surprising out of those three losses was probably Villanova's loss. Not only the fact that, it was on the road to an unranked Marquette team, but they blew a 17-point lead in the second half. So that was really shocking. And then looking at the other games, Kansas, they've definitely had trouble at West Virginia in recent years, so that was something where you knew it was going to be a good game going into it. And then Kentucky losing to Tennessee. I think that Tennessee loss has really started to show their Achilles heel. I think Kentucky is one of the best scoring teams in the nation. They're averaging a little over 90 points per game, but right now this might be one of the worst defensive squads that John Calipari has had in recent past. So I think Tennessee and their ability to shoot the ball and score points and make it a close game down the stretch, I think that really showed one of Kentucky's weaknesses. So I think that's something they're going to have to work on, especially if they want to compete for potentially that last 1 seed and to ultimately make a run to the Final Four this year.
Yeah, and we look at the box score here from the Kentucky-Tennessee game. I mean, you had your typical scoring from Malik Monk, one of the best players in the country at this point. He put up 25 again. You got 13 from Williams, and then the rest of the team, I mean, didn't do much for them. They got 15 out of Schofield, but that was about it. And for Tennessee though, they got 25 put up by Hubbs III. I mean, he's having a great year. And Briscoe put up 11 for Kentucky. Fox put up 17. So you have all the big guys scored, but not enough coming off the bench from Kentucky. I mean, they only had 4 bench points. I mean, they're not very deep. They used 8 guys. Tennessee had 5 guys off the bench that scored. So big difference there.
Yeah, Tennessee, they did a great job that night. They played an excellent game. Like you said, Malik Monk, he's averaging 21-9 a game this year. He's making his case for potentially a run at college basketball's best player. But I think, like I said, I think Kentucky really showed their weakness is their defense. Looking at this box score here, they surrendered 43 second-half points to Tennessee. And even though they outscored them in the second half, they couldn't come back from a deficit they faced earlier in the game. When it came down to it, Tennessee had one last possession. If Kentucky gets a stop, they have the ability to potentially tie the game, only down 3. And another big bucket down the stretch, and it just pulled them down 5, and it just gave them a deficit they couldn't come back from. Granted, Kentucky, they're definitely the best team in the SEC this year. I don't think anybody's going to compete with them. I don't think a Florida or someone like that's really going to give them a run for their money. So I think they'll come out of that conference pretty easily. But like I said, I think those defensive woes, they're going to have to start to clean up if they really want to become a serious contender.
Yeah, I mean, we can talk about Kentucky all we want. I mean, they're still that team that's consist year in year out of one and done guys, and I mean Malik Monk's going to be one of them. Mm-hmm. And I don't know. What do you feel about the one and dones and Parks? I mean, I feel like at Kentucky, you're bringing guys in, you're bringing in money for the school for a year, and then they're gone. And does that take anything away from the competitiveness of this sport? I mean, obviously it makes it competitive when we have these guys playing, but when they leave after a year, it just so from year in year out, you have a different squad, and it just I don't know. What do you feel about it?
I think if anything, it's tough for the fans. Like especially for myself, I think it's really tough trying to follow along with teams every single year because it seems like some of these very good teams, they're almost reconstructing their teams after every single year. So it's tough to follow along with. But I mean, if you look on the flip side, I mean, if you look at players in the NBA, the NBA is a very demanding sport. Playing an 82-game season. If you have a great career in the NBA, you can play maybe up to a decade. So seeing these one and dones, they're just trying to, I think, maximize their potential, maximize their window in the NBA, especially considering once you get past your mid-20s, you're falling off from your prime years. So I understand the decisions. I think it's frustrating for the fans, frustrating for the schools, but at the same time, I think, bringing in these young stars, and I think they can bring a lot of excitement to the crowd, but I think it's something that I think teams are trying to get away from. Calipari's lately apparently been trying to pitch 4 years because at the end of the day, basketball is not going to be around for a lot of these guys. So I think that degree is extremely important. But I think right now, I think one and dones they're inevitable. I think it's something that you're going to see as players try to maximize their careers in the NBA to kind of make the most out of what they could potentially get at the next level.
Yeah, I'm totally with you there, and sometimes it just gets annoying sometimes, honestly. Mm-hmm. It really does. I would love to see guys stay there longer. I feel like, and if you just put together some of the teams we've seen in the past, and you look back at it and you're like, wow, if this guy would have stayed 3 or 4 years, and this guy would have, how their team would have been, it's unreal if you think about it. I mean, I thought about Syracuse because I'm a Syracuse guy. And during that stretch when they had Johnny Flynn and all those guys, if he would have stayed longer, along with Wesley Johnson and all those kind of type caliber players, it could have been unreal. At Kentucky, what if Anthony Davis stayed longer, Michael Kidd-Gilchrist stayed longer? Those kind of teams, unreal. And I guess we can get on now from that. We'll talk about the Marquette Villanova game a little bit. Also, after the game, I mean, it's a tradition. You see it all the time. When an unranked team wins at home, they storm the court. And yesterday, Marquette, the school, was fined $5,000 for their students storming the court. And I don't know why. I guess we could look more into that, but I don't understand why they'd be fined $5,000. Was it a safety thing? I mean, I know they're trying to cut down on that because of safety issues, but if every other school is doing it, that's like the first time I've heard that.
Yeah, I think the number one thing especially is safety. Especially given a basketball court, you don't have a lot of room. So all of a sudden when you get kids running on the court, screaming, cheering along with their teammates and whatever else, you definitely have to think about the other players, the other team. And I think that's the one thing that the NCAA is kind of disappointed about because, you're trying to look out for the players. You're not going to try to put them in positions where opposing players could get harmed. I'm a big fan of rushing the court. I think it's great. I think it's a really cool thing when you have a team, say like a Marquette or a team that's not ranked, and they get a big win at home and all the fans rush the court. I think it's a great thing, but at the end of the day, it's all about player safety.
Yeah, I totally get that. I mean, as much fun as it is, like you said, we love seeing it, and you love seeing guys rush the court, and it just, you look after and the whole court is covered. Mm-hmm. With their respective colors. It's nice to see, but at the same time, we do talk about safety, how bad it would be if, one of your best players gets hurt after the crowd rushes the court after a big game. That just ruins your season.
Exactly.
And that could be it. What if it's a senior? What that's his last ride?
I know.
Makes sense. I just brought that up because I really haven't seen that before. A school getting fined for that.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think you see it a lot more in football. I've heard of football teams getting fines, especially when you've got teams that have these nicer turf fields that they put a lot of money into. And I know schools are paranoid about fans potentially ripping up turf or ripping up grass and damaging the fields. So I think you've seen it a lot more in football. But like I said, with the emphasis on player safety, I think you're going to start to see it in basketball a little bit more.
Yeah, and with that Villanova-Marquette game, Villanova they're the defending champion. We all remember that game, probably one of the best national championships we've seen.
Mm-hmm.
The buzzer beater by Jenkins there to knock off UNC. But they definitely lost. They lost their point guard, Archon. I still don't know how to say his name. You know how to say it?
No.
Archinakanu. Something like that. He's that huge presence, but they definitely have guys that have stepped up. Guys like Josh Hart. Josh Hart is probably one of the best guards in the country. Mm-hmm. And then you have guys, obviously Jenkins is, he didn't have a good game. He had 2 points. He played 37 minutes, only scored 2 points. And we could say that's probably what hurt them the most. A guy like that. But then you have guys like Bridges and Brunson. They put up 20 and 19. Sophomore guard Bridges. He's having a good year as well for the Wildcats. Then you look down the Marquette side. They just, if you look at it, 15, 8, 19, 11, they're pretty spread out throughout. Also them getting points off the bench. They had 38 points off the bench there. And that's huge, especially in college basketball. When you get points off the bench, that's huge.
Mm-hmm.
You need, I feel like a lot of years, some of the best teams have the 6th man of the year on their team.
Mm-hmm.
And you have guys that can come in and fill in those specific roles that they're supposed to have, and they fill in for guys who are maybe not having a good game in the starting lineup. That's huge, and saw that there, the Villanova getting beat by Marquette, and especially in the Tennessee-Kentucky game.
Oh, yeah, for sure. But one guy I wanted to touch on, Josh Hart from Villanova. A senior. He's played 4 years there, won the national championship last year. I think he's a very special player. He's a guy that scouts coin him as a blue-collar kind of player. He's taken about 64% of his shots from inside, from the 2-point range. So I think he's going to be a guy that scouts are definitely going to keep their eye on. And I think he's going to be a big part of Villanova as they try to repeat as national champions. Right now he's averaging 19 a game, bringing 6.6 total rebounds, 3.5 assists while shooting 53% from the field, which is excellent, and then 78% from the stripe. So he's going to be a big part of that team going forward.
Yeah, he with the 19 points per game, he's got better every year. He went up from 7.8 to 10.1, 15.5 to 19.0. So he definitely stepping up here in his senior year, and that's what they need after the loss of their point guard, Archinakanu, or however you say his name. I still don't know how to say it. Parks, help me out here. We need a translator over here. But, yeah, so that's huge. We love seeing these upsets. It's always a great part of the game of college basketball. We love to see it. And I saw this article on CBS Sports earlier, guy talking about the upsets and how it changes the game. But for some reason, on ESPN the other day, I saw they were talking about it and how we see these upsets all the time, but they don't. It was weird. Someone was saying that it doesn't help the game, and I'm like, how? Or does it make the season worse or better? I'm like, obviously it makes it better. You love seeing when these upsets happen, and when you have, especially when you get to the tournament, and you have 64 teams or 68 now who are able to win that title. Mm-hmm. We love seeing the upsets. I think it definitely makes the game better. I don't know why it would make it worse.
Yeah, I think definitely makes the game better. I think it definitely adds some more excitement to the game because, like I said, I think with the one-and-dones in basketball, I think that's taken a hit fan-wise when it goes to basketball because all of a sudden, teams are reconstructing their rosters. You got to learn a whole new group of players. But you have to love to see that kind of stuff. You have to see that some of those best teams are vulnerable, and it's one of those cool things like in any sport, seeing the little guys win. But at the end of the day, when it gets down to the best of the best, you're going to see those true teams come out. So it's just kind of interesting to think about, who's going to survive the tests, because we've got a lot of excellent teams this year in Villanova, Kansas, Kentucky, Baylor, but they've all had their falls so far this year. So it's interesting to see those teams and how they rebound and get back into their conference schedule.
Yeah, and like I said, this one article I read, Matt Norlander, he wrote a nice article out of CBS Sports, and he's talking about how dominance is overrated, and these historic nights of basketball are great for it. And that's, like I said, I'm not sure why in ESPN they were talking about why it would hurt the game at all, but like I said, it's been since 1979 the last time the 1, 2, and 4 all lost on the same day. But then he's bringing up other points like how we had 3 of the top 4 teams lose in 2012. They weren't the 1, 2, and 4. They were just in different order. There might have been a 3 in there. That was back in 2012, so it wasn't too long ago. I mean, 4 or 5 years ago, Syracuse, Baylor, and Duke all fell on the same day. He mentions how there's the top 2 teams lost on the same day. That was last year, February 6th of last year. So Oklahoma lost to Kansas State, North Carolina fell to Notre Dame. So definitely, it's not like an uncommon thing. I'm not bringing up like history here, but it definitely is nice to see when it happens. Mm-hmm. We all love to see it, right?
Oh, for sure. And I think it goes both ways too, because I think when you have a team that almost seems dominant, I think that gains a lot of attention too. The thing that I like to point out, for example, the Kentucky basketball team from 2014-2015, Karl Anthony Towns, Willie Cauley-Stein, Aaron Harrison, Devin Booker, the team that went 38-1, and that went into the last game of the year, the national championship game against Kaminsky's Wisconsin Badgers, and they ended up, losing, and they lost their perfect season. But I think as their perfect season went on, I think a lot of people watched those guys. A lot of people tried to see if they really held up going down the course of the year. So I like upsets. I like seeing those smaller schools win big games. But I think it's also very cool to have a team like one of those Kentucky teams that absolutely dominates the field, because all of a sudden, a lot more people are watching, a lot more people are paying attention. So I see both sides as being good to college basketball.
Yeah, it definitely makes it more interesting. Get a lot more viewers when there's teams like that. With that, we're going to go into our first break here. Get you back here at WMCB The Fuse. We'll be back in a couple minutes, and we're going to talk more college basketball here. We got talking about a huge dominating loss to one of the top teams in the country this past week, and going back to some sanctions from that very same school that happened about a year ago, why they're coming up again now, and some crazy thing you might not have heard of, Coach K there at Duke. You gotta listen to hear this, see what you think. We'll be right back. Alright, we are back here in the studio at Madai, and we are now going to talk, more college basketball here with Andrew Parks. I'm Cole Johnson. One of the top teams in the country, number 13 Louisville, this past week took down Pittsburgh in a huge blowout. You want to guess the score, Parks? I know I already told you, but do you remember?
You said, 106-51?
Yeah, 106-51. It's a 55-point loss for Pitt. And it was at Pittsburgh, nonetheless.
Wow.
It is recorded as the largest road win for Rick Pitino, and it is Pittsburgh's biggest conference loss in school history. Their worst loss came all the way back in 1906 to Westminster by 93 points. So I'm not sure what happened there, 93-point loss, but that was all the way back. That was over a century ago. We're here in 2017, and we don't see this very often, especially between two good ACC teams. Usually they're battles. Most ACC, probably the best conference, arguably the best conference in college basketball. And we don't see this very often.
No, not at all. But yeah, Louisville's putting together a pretty good year this year. They had that big win over Kentucky earlier where they beat them by 3. Right now they have 4 losses, so they're going to be a team that's going to look to compete with. Right now it's looking like UNC. They're going to be the top of the ACC like usual. Duke's all of a sudden falling off ever since Coach K's leave of absence. And to bring that up, Virginia, they're up in the mix, so it's going to be tight. But I think Louisville, the way they've been playing, I think they're definitely going to give those teams a run for their money when it comes down towards the end of the season.
Yeah, and Parks, like you mentioned, you were telling me earlier, you're probably about to say about how Duke, the thing with Coach K being injured. Why don't you tell us?
Yeah, after this last recent loss, Duke lost to NC State at home, 84-82. It was NC State's first win at Duke ever since the mid-'70s. So a combination of that and the past couple losses apparently enraged Coach K to the point where right now his Duke basketball players are no longer allowed to use the locker room, and they are no longer allowed to wear Duke apparel around campus. So I think that's
temporarily.
Temporarily, but I think that's incredible. Given I've seen restrictions from locker rooms before in the past, but right now I think Coach K's definitely furious with how Duke's been playing. I think NC State completely outplayed them the other week. They outshot them 50% to 46.9%. They outshot them from the three-point stripe, 38% to 29%. And Duke committed more turnovers. And then even though Duke out-rebounded them by 3, towards the end of the game, NC State really outplayed them. And I think, guys like Grayson Allen, they've been drawing a lot of negative media attention. Seems like that team hasn't been able to find players to step up in big moments towards the end of the game.
Yeah, and do you think that, there's got to be more into it than just them losing lately and losing NC State. There's got to be some issues in the locker room and behind the scenes on the court. Because in order for a coach to ban his players from wearing their own school apparel and not using the locker room, there's got to be something more. I would think so. There's got to be some issues off the court. Players maybe not getting along or disciplinary actions maybe. Maybe that's why he's doing it. But I can't see that it's just on the court.
Yeah. Like I said, like I was talking to you earlier, I think it's interesting to note that the last time Mike Krzyzewski missed some time for a lower back injury was back during the 95 season. And after he missed the rest of the season, after Duke started out that season, I believe it was 9-1, they finished 4-15. And that was the last Duke team that ended up missing the tournament. So I think, with Duke taking a couple losses early in his leave of absence, the coach was probably expected towards the beginning of the month of February. I think he's really trying to set the tone. I think he's trying to make a statement. And I think he's going to try to force this team to play inspired basketball until he at least comes back. But I think that just shows you the kind of impact that he has on those players. And I think him coming out and doing this, I think it's definitely sending a message to his players about their recent play and how it's been unacceptable.
Yeah, so it's easy to say that Duke is going down right now, and they're not in a good position, but it's Duke. They have talent. They're gonna find their way back. They're, at the end of every season, they're in the mix to win a national championship, especially with the guys they have like Grayson Allen and Luke Kennard. Guys like that, Emil Jefferson. Definitely still one of the top premier teams in the ACC, no matter what. No matter if they can wear apparel around school or not, they're there to play basketball. Mm-hmm. And speaking of that, we're going to talk about Grayson Allen for a minute before we get back to the Louisville thing. And what do you think about him, Parks? I think he's got a target on his back now. He's had his issues in the past. Last year he had a tripping incident, 2 of them. And then this year he had one early on in the season, and he got suspended. A lot of people were freaking out because they only suspended him for 1 game. And he got back, and immediately he's already gotten into something. He's got into a little shoving match with a guy from NC State the other day. And I feel like now he's just got that target on his back. When you're a player of his caliber, you're being looked at already. And when you have those anger issues and the types of just like fits that he has and the way he goes about when he gets angry on the floor, now it's just being eyed even closer by people. And people, every time he does something, I feel like I see it on Twitter. I see it everywhere. And I feel like, is that like impacting his game at all, mentally?
I think for sure. I think you hit on the knob, especially, given his recent turn of events, a couple of tripping incidents. But you're right. Everything he does going forward is definitely going to be scrutinized. So the smallest things that he does now, all of a sudden they're going to get blown up just because of his history on the basketball court. And I think that takes a big toll, especially on a guy like him he's just a kid. He doesn't know how to handle those kinds of things. But I think it's interesting because I think this is going to be really important, especially given Krzyzewski's recent ban of the locker room and wearing Duke apparel, is because I think Duke's definitely lacked leadership over the past couple of games, over the past couple losses. And I think he's really trying to ask guys like Grayson or other guys on the team to step up and be leaders on that team. Because I think Grayson, he's a player that I've liked watching ever since he came onto the scene when they won that national championship over Wisconsin. He's a player that I've been intrigued by, and I think he's very good. I think he's going to be a good player at the next level. But I think he really needs to mature, and I think he needs to become a leader, especially if that Duke team wants to compete later in the year for a national championship. So I think just the combination of Krzyzewski's punishment, I think him, a couple of tripping incidents getting blown out of proportion, I think he's really going to have to learn how to mature as a leader. And I think if he does, I think that team's going to be very good. But until then, it's really tough to tell. Right now, I think one of the best players, Luke Kennard, he hasn't even been starting. He's not even a full starter. So it's interesting. This is almost uncharacteristic for a Mike Krzyzewski team. Mike, a West Point grad, definitely emphasis on discipline. And with Grayson Allen's recent tripping incidents, I think that's just really uncharacteristic for a Duke basketball program.
Yeah, for sure. And, I mean, you kind of have to feel a little bit for the kid. I mean, obviously, a lot of people aren't a fan of him because, for one, he's a Duke player. And a lot of people are comparing him back to, I know we all saw the 30 for 30 on the Christian. I hate Christian Laettner. And I feel like he's a 2.0 with him. I mean, I talked about this with my buddies the other day. I was saying there's going to be several years from now, I hate Grayson Allen, 30 for 30. And, I mean, good for him. I mean, not good for him. I mean, it's not great that you're being put on the spot for incidents like that instead of your basketball play, but he's the kind of kid where he's getting that. I mean, kids love the publicity for sure. I mean, I'm sure he, under that anger and pouting or whatever you want to call it, I mean, he's probably got a little smile under there saying, yeah, this is me. This is what I want to do. But still, you got to feel for him a little bit. I mean, I'm not a huge fan of him. Obviously, he's a Duke, and I'm a Syracuse guy. But when you, now in the situation he's at, like you said, he's young, and he needs to mature, which is what happens with a lot of college athletes. So when you are immediately where he's going to have a spot on his back for every move he makes, that's got to be a little tough. And you got to feel for him a little bit. I mean, take some pressure off the kid. I mean, it's gonna be hard for him to play his game when he knows that people are going to scrutinize everything he does. And then you go back to Coach K and how we think we're like, wow, what? They can't use the locker room. They can't wear their own school apparel around school. But there's got to be a method to his madness. I mean, this is one of the best coaches of all time in college basketball, so there's got to be something behind it. He knows what he's doing.
Oh, for sure. And like I said, I think this could actually be one of the best things for Grayson Allen, some of those young players on this team, because it's really going to force them to mature. Especially Grayson, because I think no question, I think he has the talent level to play on the next level. But I think right now he definitely needs to work on maturing as a player, on and off the court. But I think, despite the recent events, I think this could be a really good thing for the Duke basketball team if they rebound effectively from this. And there's no man better to lead this than Mike Krzyzewski. Arguably the greatest head coach of all time. He'll find a way to get these guys going, and he'll find a way to get them to be contenders towards the end of the season. So as frustrating as this may be for Duke basketball fans, don't panic yet. Try to weather out the storm, and I think these guys will definitely be back. It's just one of those teams that you can never quite count out.
Yeah, now get back to the ACC. We talked about how it's arguably the best conference and has been for the past several years, especially after the addition of Syracuse, Pittsburgh, West Virginia. No, not West Virginia, I'm sorry, they're in the Big 12. But Pittsburgh and Syracuse, teams like that, just adding to the Duke, the UNCs of the world. Louisville got added in too. They all came from the Big East, which might have been the best conference before then. That the Big East with those 16 teams, probably the best conference tournament every year, but they broke apart. A lot of them came to the ACC, and now they're talking about how this year there might be 9-10 teams that make it to the dance this year from the ACC. And I mean, one of those teams has been playing really well lately is Notre Dame, who are now at 17-4, but they just got pounced by 17 points to Virginia, who I mentioned. They're on the up and up. It seems like every year Virginia quietly sneaks into the top of the ACC. They're just that defensive-minded team. They still have a guy like London Prentice running the show. He put up 22 against Notre Dame the other night. I mean, they lost a huge key part of their offense in Malcolm Brogdon from last year, but this team definitely is on the up and up. Notre Dame's still up there, playing great as well. We just talked about Louisville and that huge win over Pittsburgh. Yeah, the ACC's for real, and I don't know, what do you got to say about the ACC?
I was going to say, to put things into perspective, just to look at how good the ACC's been this season, only one team, Boston College, does not have a winning record right now in the conference. Yeah, so that's just incredible by itself. And to go along with that, you've got like 7 teams that are ranked right now in the conference. You got UNC, Florida State, Virginia, Notre Dame, Louisville, Duke, and then you have a Miami team or a Georgia Tech or a Virginia Tech team that could crank and could break into that top 25 as the next week's rankings come out. Yeah, I think it's definitely been one of the better conferences in college basketball over these past several decades, and I think this season, I think they've definitely shown that they are the best conference in college basketball right now.
Yeah, and then another team I just missed, but you helped remind me, Florida State. I mean, they're number 6 in the country, 18-3, 6-2 in the ACC. I definitely saw them. I saw them play. They can play. I saw them play against North Carolina a couple weeks ago, and that's a tough place to play at UNC, and they stuck with them. UNC had a lot of chances to break that game open, but Florida State stayed right with them. They have a good basketball team. They did just lose yesterday, though, to Georgia Tech, who is playing well, like you just mentioned, who is at 12-8 right now, 4-4 in the ACC, sitting there in the middle of the pack. But obviously still have a chance to get in if they're saying that 9-10 teams could make it in. Then you look at the Big 12. They got Baylor, Kansas. Baylor's only has one loss on the season. They're number 5 in the country. They just squeaked by a decent Texas Tech team last night. Then look at the Pac-12 and UCLA. I mean, they have a great team in Lonzo Ball, the freshman standout. Another guy who's up there for Player of the Year with Malik Monk and company. But they just dropped one last night to USC. Their second straight loss. They were 19-1 before that. And UCLA definitely... They have the type of team that can win. I think a lot of it falls on the freshman Lonzo Ball, which makes it tough when you put a lot of your marbles on a freshman.
Yeah, I think Lonzo Ball's been playing excellent. He definitely came out into the scene, especially with UCLA going into Kentucky, getting a big win at the beginning of the season. Right now Lonzo's averaging just under 15 points a game, 5.8 boards, 8 assists per game, shooting 54% from the field. I think scouts are definitely looking at him next year as potentially a guy that's going to leave early. They're looking at him as an elite passer, an excellent player in transition. He has a little bit of a funky shot, but it's working for him right now. He's shooting 43.1% from the three-point line. So he's been playing excellent. And I think another guy that I wanted to talk about when we talked about the Big 12 is Jonathan Motley from Baylor right now. And just recently on the 17th, when they played Texas, he put up the Big 12's first 30-point, 20-rebound game. He had 32 points and 20 rebounds. It's the first time that happened in the Big 12 since Blake Griffin did it back in 2009. So that's putting him in pretty good company just off that game itself. But right now the big man's averaging 16.2 points per game, 9.6 total rebounds, so almost averaging a double-double. And he's got 2.1 assists per game, shooting 51% from the field. So I think he's another guy that's going to go down that wouldn't watch, along with the Josh Harts, Lonzo Ball, and then also Frank Mason from Kansas. But I think another guy I want to talk about with you is Caleb Swanigan from Purdue. The sophomore, there was a recent ESPN article that just came out this week, talked about his background growing up, how he had tough problems at the house. You know, his parents were in drug problems. One of his other parents died, I believe. But at the end of 8th grade, the guy weighed 360 pounds. Just unbelievable trying to just visualize that. But he was one of those kids that apparently he had the athletic skills. He just ate some more, and given his problems within his family, he was taken under the wing, kind of in like a blindside idea, and he was trained, and he ended up dropping 115 pounds, and he got that offer. He originally committed to Michigan State and ended up decommitting and recommitted to Purdue. So he had a tough trip to Michigan State the other day, but Purdue ended up pulling out a big win. And with him down low, I think Purdue is going to be a team that's going to make a pretty good case in the Big Ten, because I think right now there really hasn't been a clear-cut favorite in the Big Ten. Teams that are usually excellent, like the Ohio States and the Wisconsins, I don't think any of those teams have really stuck out this year. So that conference is definitely up for grabs.
Yeah, and you mentioned some guy I forgot to mention, Frank Mason, third out of Kansas. He's probably the best point guard in the nation. He's quick. I mean, he's got the handles, he can shoot, and he plays some great defense. I especially remember it from last year, and probably one of the greatest regular season games I've ever watched was that game in Kansas. Kansas and Oklahoma went to 3 overtimes, and the way he guarded Buddy Hield, I was like, man, this kid can play defense, and he wants it. I mean, Buddy Hield went off, but he was probably the best college basketball player last season. But the way that man, he wants it, and it shows. And another guy like him, I've noticed, has come upon the scene as Joe Barry out of North Carolina. He's up there for the running and one of the best guards in the country as well.
Yeah, going back to Frank Mason, given his senior season, Frank's a guy that's, definitely a leader on that Kansas basketball team. Scott's looking at him as a mature player and someone that's hard to keep out of the lane. Right now he's sharing a very successful campaign, which he's averaging just under 20 points per game, 4.4 boards, and 5.2 assists per game. But he's going to be a key player if Kansas wants to contend later in the season. He's been a guy that's helped those teams in the recent past. And I think with this being his senior season, I think he's definitely playing with a lot more intensity. And he's a fun player to watch.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, he's a rarity. He's one of those guys out of Kansas that are going to be there all 4 years. Don't see that much out of teams like Kansas in them. But another guy from Kansas who's probably going to be a one and done is Josh Jackson. Seen him play. And then another Jackson from UNC, Justin Jackson. He's got some game too, and he's been there for a few years too. And he's definitely one of the best players in the ACC this year. His 3 ball has just been unreal so far. But with that, we're going to go into another break. We'll be right back. Don't forget to follow us at Beyond the Box Score on Twitter at Fuse with a Z, WMCB, and also at Crowd Chant Sport. And we will have links where you can go to our website, and we will put up the shows if you can't listen to them live, and read our articles. Just a reminder. So with that, we will go into our break, and we will be right back in a couple minutos.
Solid.
We are back here to wrap it up here in the last few minutes of our show here tonight. Cole Johnson, Andrew Parks again. for this college basketball. And we're going to end it off with, I had a question here. A little critical thinking here, Parks. We got, so we mentioned the ACC and big schools like that, like the Power 5 conferences, and how tough they are and how competitive they are. So if you look at some of the top scorers in the nation, a lot of those guys are juniors, seniors from smaller schools, some of the no-name schools. And my question was, do you think the reason that a lot of these statistical leaders are from smaller schools is because of the amount of great players that don't surround them? And how in the bigger schools, in the most powerful schools, you got so many guys on the team that you spread the wealth, and their numbers aren't as high as they are because, for one, they're playing with a lot of other great players and the competition. So does that have anything to do with it?
Yeah, I think that's part of it, but I think the big thing that you mentioned, I think, is a lot of those guys that are towards the top that are from the smaller conferences, they're juniors or seniors, they're upperclassmen. They've been in college basketball for quite some time, so I think the experience definitely factors in. Whereas you have guys like Lonzo Ball and Malik Monk, and I think Malik's averaging 21-9 a game. He's playing excellent, but if you look at Lonzo Ball, he's only averaging under 15 points a game. I think part of that's from him, being young, being a little inexperienced. So I think as he matures, you'll start to see those numbers go up. But I think it's pretty clear that some of the teams that play in lesser conferences, you're going to see guys that score a little bit more. Like, for example, the leading scorer in the NCAA right now, Marcus Keene, averaging 29.8 points per game from the Central Michigan Chippewas. And that's not a knock against Central Michigan by any means. If you're playing Division I college basketball, that is the highest level of college basketball you can play in the country. But I think just some of those smaller conferences, I think that's when you start to see numbers that are a little bit bigger, numbers that are a little more skewed.
Yep. Yeah, and just like you said, numbers are skewed a little bit. I mean, the top 3 scorers in the ACC, Jamel Artis and Michael Young from Pittsburgh, and then Boston College's Jerome Robinson. I mean, that might be because, not saying they're not good players, but they are on 2 of the teams that are in the bottom half of the ACC. Mm-hmm. You're not seeing the guys from like Justin Jackson, Joel Berry, Grayson Allen, guys like that up in the top half of the ACC that are up there in the scoring leaders because they have more guys around them that can score as well. So, I don't know what you guys think. That's what we're thinking here. I mean, it's pretty... I feel like it's kind of obvious, but who knows? That's what sports are all about. You have your own opinion, right? Mm-hmm. Anything. You can think whatever you want. But, so we have that. We just want to talk about that. Anything else, Parks? You mentioned the Kentucky...
Yep, Kentucky, Kansas.
Kentucky, Kansas coming up again, round 2.
Mm-hmm.
They played earlier, had a crazy game. They both went to overtime. And so, no, it's not a rematch. I'm sorry. I was thinking of the Kentucky UCLA game. I'm sorry.
Okay, yeah.
That was the Kentucky UCLA game early on in the season that went to overtime, where Malik Monk put up 47 points and that crazy 3 at the end. But so this is a big game, Kentucky, Kansas. Who you got?
That's going to be a tough one. Right now, the game's being played in Kentucky. Both teams coming off 2 tough losses. I really like Kansas. I like Frank Mason III. I think he's going to be a difference maker going down. Whenever Kansas needs a bucket, that's the guy they go to. So I think that game's going to go down to the wire, and Kansas is going to have the ball, and I think Frank Mason's going to take a shot at the end of the game, and I think he's going to win it for the Jayhawks. Right now, it's a really close game. The line's even. And like I said, Kentucky is one of the top scoring teams in the nation, averaging just over 90 points per game. But I think the thing to look for in Kentucky is I think their defense. How are they going to slow down guys like the Jacksons and the Masons? I think if they can, I think Kentucky's going to have a really good shot in that game. But I really like the leadership on Kansas, and I think they're going to pull through with a big victory.
Yeah, I really would like to disagree with you, Parks. Cause an argument, disagreement here in the booth. But, I don't know, I do really like Kansas. Kentucky, I guess I'll go the other way. I'll say Kentucky's going to win this game. Maybe they have more NBA quality with Malik Monk and those guys, Fox and Briscoe, I'm just gonna disagree with you just because I want to.
All right.
All right. You want to put a bet on it? No, I don't think that's very legal right now. Anyway, we're college athletes. But anyways, I'll say Kentucky's gonna win this one. Even though I'd really like to say Kansas would.
All right.
I mean, I guess we have this marked that I said that now because we are recording finally, but we're just gonna pretend if Kentucky loses, I did say Kansas won, right? So I can take that back, right?
That's all right. Yeah, and then we got another big game on Sunday, just before all the football starts getting going, the Pro Bowl at least. We have Villanova taking on Virginia. That's going to be another big game. Villanova coming off that tough loss against Marquette. I think in that game, I think it's going to be a close one. I think obviously Virginia is a team that you look at for their defense. They play exceptionally well. They usually win one-scoring games. But I think Villanova is going to play some inspired basketball coming off another tough loss. And I think they're going to win that game on Sunday.
Virginia's going to win. Villanova's going to lose 2 straight.
All right.
2 straight losses, just like UCLA did.
See about that.
That's what I think, maybe. Who knows? It's sports. It happens a lot. You have teams like this that are just rolling. They come off national championship. They're even better the next year. It's bound to happen. Lose 2 games in a row.
Mm-hmm.
I'll just say it's happened because I want to again.
All right.
But with that, we're going to go right before we end. Just a little mention here. Mr. Brett Musburger. He's been one of the real faces of broadcasting, sports broadcasting, in the last 30, 40 years. I mean, this man's done it all. Mm-hmm. He's done college football, college basketball. He started Parks told me he started the whole NFL Live before pregame and halftime. He's done golf. He's done it all. You name it. And definitely a good send-off here. He's going to do his last game, Kentucky and Georgia, on January 31st. That will be his last game on air.
Yeah, Musburger, he's been a great voice. He's been a common voice in broadcasting. He's done 7 of the BCS National Championships, well, now the College Football Playoff. He's done events such as NASCAR, IndyCar Series. He's done NBA play-to-play. He's done the NFL. He's been a great broadcaster, a guy that a lot of people can look up to. He's started back in 1975. So right now, him stepping down, he's 77 years of age. He looks to move to Vegas and start a sports handicapping business. But I think it's definitely been a pleasure listening to his voice. He's done work with CBS, ABC, ESPN, and he will definitely be missed.
Yeah, definitely one of those guys that we've heard a lot. And you have guys like him also who just retired this past season, like Vern Lundquist from CBS. He was the big SEC football man. Mm-hmm. And then you have guys who are coming into their last few years, maybe another decade. You got guys like Jim Nantz. He's been a great play-by-play broadcaster. He's done it all as well. So definitely a man who will be missed. I love hearing his voice when a game comes on, especially with his special phrase that you are looking live when he comes in every game. And we're going to actually have you listen to a clip here, a little prelude to Brett Musburger here right before we wrap up.
Los Angeles Coliseum. You are looking live at Kinnick Stadium in Iowa City. You are looking live at a sold-out Memorial Stadium in Columbia.
3 wide receivers out to the right. Flutie flushed. Throws it down. Caught by Boston College. I don't believe it. It's a touchdown.
Down in South Florida. Remember again, the night of January 7th for the BCS Championship. It'll be number 1 Notre Dame against number 2 Alabama, but number 2 will be favored.
So that was it. Hearing the voice of Brent Musburger there. Definitely a storied broadcaster. A lot of good calls there. We heard the couple national championship games. His opening phrase, "We are looking live, you are looking live," and then obviously that national championship Villanova won over Georgetown. And that big game, Michael Crabtree. Remember him? Now he's on the
Texas
Raiders,
Tech.
tearing it up in Oakland. Back in his Texas Tech days when they took down Texas there on the final play of the game.
Yep.
So,
Colt McCoy.
yep, definitely a lot of good calls he's been on. So we definitely will remember him. And that's going to do it for our show here tonight. Thank you for joining me, Andrew.
There you go. Thanks for having me on as always, Cole.
Yeah, no problem. And don't forget, Parks is now a part of us at Crowd Chant Sports, where we write articles and we'll be posting all of our shows on there on our website at www.crowdchantsports.wordpress.com. And then we are also on Twitter, and we are part of Beyond the Box Score. So a lot of things going on here at Medaille College, and you are listening to WMCB The Fuse. Catch us on Tuesday, where myself, Kyle, and Connor will talk Medaille sports and worldwide sports. So that is it. Have a great night. We will see you later.